Is the running back position broken in Dynasty football? We see the plethora of different running back options in best ball and other redraft strategies, whether you're going zero RB, hero RB, robust RB. But does Dynasty still value the position? Or is it a position that we need to move away from and potentially look at making some changes? Stick around as we dive in and talk about it next. Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Sanctuary. That is right. We are going to try and work out whether the running back position is broken in Dynasty. I'm joined by one of the best Dynasty minds out there. Pat, how are you doing this evening?
Rich, I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And my condolences that things did not go better in the Euro final for you. I was cheering vicariously for England because Lord knows the USA is never going to do anything significant in international soccer. Was really pulling for your side, and I'm sorry it didn't work out.
Hey, look, as a Jets fan, I'm used to getting hopes up and then only to be dashed and be disappointed. So yeah, I think I'm pretty used to that. Dangle the carrot only to have it whipped away at the last moment. So I'm resigned myself to let's dive into some fantasy football and hopefully it can help me lick my wounds and we can move forward. But so the idea of this show really is I've got Pat on, and what I want to do is kind of have a bit of a deep dive into the running back position. I think there is an element where over the past few years, the position is just getting devalued and devalued and devalued. And has it now gone too far? But before we get to that, Pat, let's start with how you're approaching the running back position in your dynasty rosters. So I kind of have got on the screen here two different ways of attacking it. There are plenty of other ways, but I feel like this is probably the two main ways where you're going to go out and you're going to try and acquire one, maybe two superstars at the position. Is it a Christian McCaffrey? Is it a Bijan? Is it a Breece Hall? Or are you going to go and attack it with volume? Are you trying to get 5 or 6 options that you can kind of play the matchups and rotate, but you're not having to spend big capital to go and get them? So how do you approach the running back position across most of your dynasty rosters?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm more a volume player in that regard. Like I don't generally spend a lot on the running back position in startup drafts, Rich. And of course, that doesn't mean I'm just, trying to disregard the position or take total shortcuts there. But I do want to build with wide receivers and quarterbacks, of course, in Superflex first, and sort of work on getting the running back room right over time through rookie drafts, trades, etc. So that does tend to lead to more of a volume approach where I'm just trying different things, mixing and matching a little bit. Occasionally I'll stumble blindly into an elite talent, and that's great. But for the most part, I think I'm trying the volume approach more over the chasing the elite talent and paying up for it. Like that I generally don't like to do.
Yeah, and I think that tends to be how I approach most dynasty builds, and it feels like that's probably becoming the consensus where everybody's looking to build around those young wide receivers, young quarterbacks, and those slightly more stable positions. And it's almost like I coined a phrase someone the other day with called rent a running back, where you're almost looking to basically rent a running back when you're competitive. And rather than spending up for a Bijan, you go out and rent 2, 3, 4. Someone like Derrick Henry is the perfect option this year, where you can kind of pay a pick, drop him in, and you're saying, yeah, I'm not getting any resale value. I'm not looking at anything beyond that, but he's probably going to give me fringe RB1 production this year, and I don't really care what happens after that as such. And when you're acquiring those, let's say your kind of volume bunch options, are you looking to do that via the draft? Can you spend a lot of those second round picks? In this year's draft, would that have been Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright? Or are you spending those, as I mentioned, second round picks to go out and get a Derrick Henry or a Joe Mixon or someone like that can help you win right now?
So I think if I'm on the verge of a championship, if I feel like I am a top contender, I will go out and trade for players like Derrick Henry. And I think Aaron Jones is another good target for win now teams. I'll go out and do that, and that reminds me, I need to offer a rival something for Aaron Jones pretty soon here, because I was looking at rosters, and with a team, I feel the championship window is open, and I could use like one more capable running back, and I think Aaron Jones is a good target in that particular league. But I sort of let go of my wide receiver snobbery a little bit in rookie drafts. I've definitely have wide receiver snobbery in startup drafts, less so in rookie drafts, where I do treat maybe the wide receiver and running back positions a little more equally there. And I especially like taking shots at running backs in the late rounds of rookie drafts, because I think that's your best chance to hit on some, like pay a small price and get a big profit. Like
Yeah,
that's the thing about running backs, and kind of it gets to my overall philosophy, Rich. I guess the reason I don't like to spend up, if I can avoid it, at running back, it's a less predictable position than wide receiver. And I don't want to spend more on an unpredictable position. It's like, an investment portfolio. I don't think you want 80% of your portfolio in really volatile assets. You want like stable assets, but you do want a little bit of volatility. So, if things break the right way, you can, like, there's some windfall potential there. I think you want some of that, but not all the time. So, yeah, I'm willing to spend down just because I don't think, I think investing a lot in trying to build through the running back position and make your biggest investments there, I think you're building a house of cards.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where we've seen people in Dynasty certainly veer away from, investing too much in that running back position, because it is one injury away. Your potential to suddenly have your entire Dynasty roster fall down if you've spent big to go and acquire Christian McCaffrey or Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall to be the kind of cornerstone of your franchise, and then it's one ACL injury and suddenly that comes crashing down. I think for me, I really like this question because to me it's kind of both, in terms of I because I'm taking that volume approach to running back. It's not just a one size fits all approach. I'm almost trying to balance out a roster. If I'm talking 5, 6, let's say competent running backs, top 36 dynasty assets in terms of the running back position, I probably want a couple of younger guys that maybe I've drafted in the second round of a rookie draft. I probably want a couple of, aging veterans, like I said, like a Derek Henry, a Joe Mixon, that I can go out and add to that room. And then maybe a little bit some cheaper undervalued guys that, someone like a Zach Moss or something like that is in the middle of his career, has got some ceiling potential, but probably isn't quite as expensive to go and acquire, either as an obvious win now guy like Derek Henry or one of those young guys that's got a lot of potential. And that's how I guess I'm trying to build out my running back room, is trying to almost cover all bases by just attacking volume. But I've not got masses of resources dedicated to the position. I guess the way I think about it is I'm probably spending the same amount of resources on 5 or 6 players as it would take to go and acquire one Bijan Robinson or one Breece Hall. But rather than having to spend, we talked about it on last week's show when we were doing the sophomore running back, sort of 2 firsts plus to go and get one of those guys, I can spend 6 second round picks on 6 kind of RB2, RB3 types in Dynasty. And that's certainly how I'm looking to take the position. But what I want to do, Pat, is I've done a bit of a deep dive in terms of the numbers over the last, I've looked at a 10-year cycle, because I think that's probably about the time span that we've seen kind of Dynasty start to take hold. Certainly it's as far back as the LFADP goes. I think that's kind of where Dynasty has started to play mainstream, and maybe I'm only saying that because I've been playing for 10 years. But so looking at kind of the points per game on average, as you can see on the screen here, I've taken 2013 and 2023 as kind of 10 years apart. It's pretty consistent through those years. As you can see, the points scored for the top 6, the 6 to 12, 13 to 24, and those RB3s, 25 to 36. it's pretty consistent across the board. Like there's no drastic change over the last 10 years that what we're seeing from kind of those running backs. Have you got any thoughts on that? Is there anything that surprises you, or is that what you'd expect to see?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I think it's kind of expected based on the continuing trend toward committees. Back when I started playing fantasy football in the prehistoric times, the 1990s, it was those few backfields that were committees were always especially vexing to fantasy managers. Now it's the few backfields that aren't committees. That just a few where we expect big workloads for guys like Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall. That is the exception rather than the rule now. And now I think you just hope for a backfield being split two ways instead of three. And like this is the trend I would expect, with this graphic based on the ever evolving committee trend and how, like every coach seems to acknowledge that you cannot get through a season with just one running back handling the bulk of the workload. You need multiple guys in most cases.
Yeah, and even those studs that you mentioned there as kind of the guys that you think are going to get the bulk of the carries. The Jets have drafted two running backs this year to complement Breece Hall after drafting one last year. The 49ers have drafted yet another running back to add to Elijah Mitchell, Christian McCaffrey. And then the Falcons have still got Tyler Algier to complement Bijan Robinson. Even those studs that we're kind of holding up as the elite in Dynasty have still got compliments. So I think it's definitely, that gone are the days of, I think when I first started getting into American football, LaDainian Tomlinson and Sean Alexander, who were scoring, I think it was 30 touchdowns or something in 1 year, wasn't it? Where nobody in that backfield got any touches other than those guys, kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a trend that we've seen over the last 10 years. But there's been no real change across that last 10 years. It's been fairly consistent. Now, if we were going to go and look at ADP in comparison, this is where it drastically changes. So taking DLF ADP, this is 2014 comparing to 2024. As you can see, this is one QB. At the top 12, it's exactly the same. There's four running backs going in both 2014 and 2024 in the first round of a startup. But after that, it drastically changes. So you can see in drop from 2014 to 24 is four less running backs in the first two rounds. There's 9 less running backs in the top 50. And then there's 5 less running backs in the top 100 overall. Is that how you've seen the trend over these last 10 years, or does that kind of surprise you, that drastic change?
Yeah, I think a lot of managers have learned that, the running back position can be very fragile. We've seen cautionary tales like Todd Gurley, who quickly went from being a force of nature to having his career go up in a puff of smoke, and it was just gone. And if you had Todd Gurley on your roster at the time, that's quite a blow. That's something you're going to learn from, and maybe be a little more cautious about investing in the bell cow running backs. So I do think people have, and we're seeing this now to a lesser, well, maybe even to a greater extent in best ball leagues, where people have really started piling onto the wide receiver position and realizing that's maybe the safer place to park your early round draft capital. So it doesn't totally surprise me that we're seeing the same thing in dynasty startups.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want the best ball content, Tom's talks plenty about the running back glory hole. He did a fantastic video breaking down how those running backs in that sort of 75 to 150 range are absolute dynamite in best ball. There'll be a link below. Go check it out. But yeah, I think it's two things, isn't it? It's people becoming slightly more thoughtful, I guess, in their approach to dynasty. Putting those elite assets not just in the guys that are scoring me points now, but understanding a life cycle and the I guess the diversion from redraft to dynasty and how they are completely different. I think when I first started playing dynasty, it was almost like treated like redraft, but you got to keep your players at the end of the year. And I think that now there's definitely a lot more strategy, a lot more thought, a lot more tactics around it. And that's where we've seen that kind of right, I'm now investing these players in that 3-4 year window, which, running backs, if they get 3-4 years of production, it's almost seen as an outlier rather than the norm, quite frankly. Um, we're going to dive across to a graphic here that just shows again exactly what we're talking about. The running back trends in terms of ADP for the top five is very much similar, but then it drastically diverges where we see a real drop off after the elite options in terms of price. Do you think that we can take anything, I guess, from that? The elites are still held up the same way they were 10 years ago. Do you think perhaps we need to redress those elite options? Are we overvaluing the likes of Bijan Robinson, Brees Hall, even Jamal Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, quite frankly, because of that potential for them to drop off and that injury risk?
That is the risk with them, but the potential benefits to having one of those rare bell cow running backs who does consistently get around 20 touches a game, there's real value to that now in the committee running back era. So I think it's justified as long as the people investing in those types of backs, the McCaffreys, the Bijans, the Brees Halls, recognize the fragility and how it could all disappear really quickly. But there is a great deal of value to having the sort of back who gets that kind of workload and has that sort of weekly upside for scoring.
Yeah. So I guess my overall thought, how can we take advantage of this change? Is it a case of the world's getting smarter, dynasty players are getting smarter, and this is the right way to approach it, where it's almost stars and scrubs approach, where if you've got a stud, great. If not, let's take a volume approach? Or do you think there's something there? Perhaps the way we're valuing running backs has almost gone too far, where they're now undervalued, and those running backs 7, 8, 9, 10 in ADP could actually represent really good value in where they're going in startups.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost like being out swimming in the sea, Rich, and dealing with a riptide. I don't know if you want to swim against the riptide in this case. I don't think this is the time to zag when other people are zigging and decide that you're going to plow heavy resources into the running back position. Like, I think the market is getting this increasingly right. So I think the edges you might find at running back are like it's you're going to have to like find opportunities in the trade market, be smart about rookie drafts, and maybe, dig into the running back classes, carefully and pick your spots in rookie drafts and aggressively add some of the rookies maybe. And by the way, we're going to have a pretty exciting rookie class coming in 2025. So maybe that
Looks
will,
good so far, doesn't it?
yeah, if we were, discouraging people too much with the, if this sounds too doom and gloom to the, like hardcore running back people, maybe we should strike the optimistic note that the running back class of 2025 is probably the strength of rookie drafts next year. And, there are at least like 9 or 10 right now who are making my mouth water.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can talk about drastic market trends and kind of whether things have gone too far. I also think part of it is just a supply and demand question, and we had a couple of really bad drafts at the running back position, and I think that you look at the 2021 class that was expected to have some pretty high hopes. We had Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, and there were some real expectations of that draft class coming in. And okay, Travis Etienne's had a couple of okay years, but he's not been great by any stretch of the imagination. And then, Javonte Williams has basically done nothing. Najee Harris is now being overtaken by Jalen Warren, who was an undrafted free agent. And it just feels like, because we've had a couple of below average draft classes, 2022 was basically Brees Hall and not much else. That's probably where we're lacking those good young running backs that we maybe be a little bit more excited about, that could, I guess, flip this tide and encourage people to invest in the running back position because we've got good young guys. At the moment it feels like we're missing that, and unfortunately the 2024 draft, I'm not sure, is going to address that balance even more.
Yeah, we need a new wave of star power. And, maybe we'll get it next year. Again, this year, I'm sure some of these guys are going to pop, but we just don't know who, because this was maybe one of the more confusing running back classes, like just not seeing anyone go in the first round, and then like not really a lot of day two running backs in the NFL draft either. So it's just we're sort of panning for gold with this year's class. Yeah, 2022 it was a deep class, but to your point, there was not a lot of like top marquee headline star power in that. Like it turned out a lot of pretty solid backs, but yeah, overall we could use some high wattage here with one of these classes, and maybe next year's the year.
Yeah, I think it got everything crossed for that. So I guess what we're saying is, if you're a contender, the old adage used to be that if you've got two elite running backs, you're a contender. I think with the move to Superflex and everything like that, and the way we've just got so many elite wide receivers at the moment, it feels like you can't roster enough. I feel like you can be a contender if you're building around quarterbacks and running backs, quarterbacks and wide receivers. Do you feel confident if we can go back to that image earlier of that running back volume approach? You've got a running back room of Ramondre Stevenson, Tajay Spears, Brian Robinson, Gus Edwards, Joe Mixon. If you're loaded at quarterback and wide receiver, is that enough for you to sit there and say, I'm a true contender? Or are you having to go out and pay big bucks to get one of those kind of top 4 or 5 guys?
I think so. I mean, maybe down the stretch in November, in the waning weeks of the regular season, maybe you want to fortify the position a little, and you're willing to give up future draft capital to add that big name running back to sort of anchor that position for you down the stretch. But I think I'm willing to play that way for the first 10 or 11 weeks of the regular season with a group like that, because in this era, Rich, that group you mentioned doesn't sound like a bad running back room the way I play.
Yeah.
There aren't really any teams where I'm sitting on Jonathan Taylor and Bijan Robinson. It just doesn't happen. Like, I'm lucky if I have one guy like that. So, yeah, I'm kind of happy to have a mix and match backfield as long as I'm strong pretty much everywhere else. And then maybe I'll try to sort it late in the regular season to make that push for a championship.
Yeah, I know. I completely endorse that and think that's a great approach, because I do think sometimes in Dynasty people almost go too quick to go all in, and it's like if you're making that all in move to go and get that stud running back in week 3 or week 4, chances are everything's going to have changed by the time you get to your playoffs. I think the later you can leave that thing, if you're a true contender and you're a really good roster, you shouldn't need one stud running back to get you 10, 11 wins that you need to make the playoffs. So I think that's a really smart strategy. And then so much changes in season. We were sitting here last year, there's no way anybody would have thought that Kyren Williams was a league winner last year, and then suddenly he emerges and comes. There's probably going to be maybe not to the level of Kyren Williams last year, but there'll be a player that will emerge, and if he happens to be on a rebuilding roster, you can probably go out and acquire him without having to pay 2 firsts to go and get Bijan. So I think it's a really sensible approach. And we started this whole conversation of, is the running back position broken? I don't think it's necessarily broken. I think it's just a new way of looking at it, where those 3 or 4 elite studs are so valuable, but actually you can almost cobble together replacement in attacking it with volume if you're doing it the right way, would be how I'd kind of sum up. Do you agree with that?
I do. Yeah, it just maybe requires a rethink. It's not broken. We have not turned into the Canadian Football League where they've taken away one of the downs and pass 85% of the time. So like the running back position still does matter for sure. But I agree, Rich. I think it's all in the way we attack it, and maybe, optimizing our approach and not over investing in a position that is especially volatile.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've certainly been a roster where you go out and you acquire that stud running back and they get injured next week, and it's heartbreaking when that does happen. So yeah, enjoy the volume approach, and it's certainly how I'm going to be playing moving forward. Well, Pat, thank you ever so much for your time. It's always amazing to get you on. I love talking things through with you. Remind everybody watching, everybody listening. I mean, if you're watching, you can see plenty behind Pat, but where can they find you? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Rich. Everyone can check out fantasypros.com and be sure to listen to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast, the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Podcast, and people can find me on Twitter at Fitz_FF.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much. If you are watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. We're just about to kick off redraft season. We've got some very exciting things lined up. But thank you so much for your time, and we'll be back very soon.